Welcome to This is Route 66. Today we're featuring Kingman, Arizona, and with me is my co-host, Chris Briley.
Good morning, Tim.
I'd like to introduce Josh Noble, the Tourism Services Manager for the city of Kingman, Arizona. Thank you for joining us today, Josh.
Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. You know, Josh, Kingman, Arizona is such a unique city with a colorful past. Let's step back in time. Can you tell us about the early years of Kingman, Arizona and the early Route 66 through your area?
Absolutely, Tim. So Route 66 and Kingman really are born out of America's move west. You could really go all the way back to when Texas was annexed into the United States in 1845. That kicked off the Mexican-American War, which went until 1848. And basically, all of the land going to the west became part of U.S. territories. In 1848, at the end of that war, Army spy by the name of Edward Fitzgerald Beale, he brought some gold samples from California to Washington to share what wealth there was in California. And that sparked a huge migration to California. And by 1850, California was a state. And so you had all this territory that was largely uncharted between these different states. So the federal government realized they needed to have a wagon road that people could use all year round. You had the Mormon Trail, the Oregon Trails up north, but neither of those could be passed in the winter months. So they commissioned Edward Fitzgerald Beale, the same Army officer. He's now a naval lieutenant. He knows how to navigate by the stars. They want a path that is south enough that it could be an all-weather route. This is 1857, and we're on the heels of the Civil War. So you had this Southern contingency that they wanted to stay up from. So they really chose the 35th parallel for those reasons. And he brought camels over from Egypt, figured camels are a desert animal, so they would be great for surveying a road through the desert, and used the camels, some horses, military to build that road going through the territories to California. And of course, when you have the road, you need to have a military presence to keep travelers safe. So there were different military encampments that were placed along Beale's wagon road, and there was a lot of downtime. So the soldiers that were at those different camps, they would try to find things to do, go out in the hills, do some prospecting, and found gold, silver, copper in the area. So mining started to become a big activity with all of the soldiers and the people coming through. Ranching was really growing in the latter part of the 19th century. So really that wagon road, though, Tim, had followed the same path that the Native Americans had already used for migration routes and trade routes. It followed the lay of the land, and go up through mountains. Wagons don't like mountains, and went spring to spring because water sources through the desert were very important. Well, with all of this added economic activity, with the mining, with the ranching, really brought in the need to have a better way of transporting, which brought in the railroad. So just 25 short years later, 1882, Lewis Kingman, Kingman's namesake, surveyed the railroad going through Arizona all the way to the Colorado River, and that brought a lot more activity. So really, from the beginning, Kingman was founded in 1882 with that railroad. We had mining, railroading, and ranching, quite a diversified economy for an early Western town.
So can you tell us about early Route 66 through Kingman?
Yes, so Route 66, before Route 66 was established, you had National Old Trails Highway. This is in the 19 teens. I think the first cars that arrived in Kingman were about 1910, and you had about 500,000 cars on the road at that time. There weren't a whole lot, but that was growing. And with the end of World War II and the really robust economic engine that was born out of that. There were a lot more cars that were starting to get on the road. So a new highway commission was formed to establish highways in the country that were more suited for moving troops and supplies, especially in wartime after the World War I experience. And so Route 66 was one of the main highways that was established in 1926, along with the others, really for the purpose of um, connecting Los Angeles and Chicago, because Los Angeles, Chicago, and New York were the major manufacturing centers in the country. And there was a great bit of infrastructure between New York and Chicago, but going out west, there really wasn't. So getting supplies, getting product between those centers was difficult. And so Route 66, or US Highway 66, was envisioned by Cyrus Avery. He was a businessman from Oklahoma, to connect that route and really, complete the transcontinental infrastructure. So Route 66 opened up in 1926. With that, you had a lot more cars. We had about 20 million cars registered in the United States, and 80% of all of the cars in the world were here in the US. So we were really a car culture right from the beginning. Then 1929, Charles Lindbergh was here and established the first commercial airport in Arizona, right here in Kingman. It was called Port Kingman. Um, a lot of travelers that were trying to quickly get across the country at the time would go by plane in the day and railroad at night, because you didn't have lights on the airport's landing strips at the time. So Kingman was another major hub where people could fly in at the airport and they could take the train out, or that's how they would move mail quickly as well. So Route 66 really followed the same path as the railroad did, that the wagon road did, that the Native Americans used it before. So really, it's more or less one stage in the life cycle of this path that has changed as the country's developed.
I have a question. Didn't the route get changed in Arizona? Didn't the governor have a tiff with a couple of cities?
So the route changed a few different times, depending on where things got washed out, or gold rushes were going on. I think the one with the tiff might have been New Mexico, but in Arizona we had going to the west of us. It goes through the Black Mountains. Because that's where a gold rush was going on in the 18 or 1920s. But by 1950s, they rerouted it to where Interstate 40 goes now, because it was a lot easier for cars to go around the mountain range. So there were a couple different alignment changes through the different communities, but that was probably the major alignment change in Arizona.
So I got a question now. Is Kingman in a mountainous area?
Kingman is. So we are at about 33 to 3,500 feet, depending on where you are. We've got mountains around us that go up to 8,600 feet. And we've got a lot of different peaks that rise up to where you have pinyon pines, a little bit of greenery. So we go from the low deserts up into the high deserts around Kingman.
So I got a follow up question to that. I've heard a tale, and maybe you can tell me if it's true or not. In the early years of Route 66 in mountainous areas, with the old Model Ts, etc., they would actually go up the mountains in reverse because there were no fuel pumps. The gas tanks were gravity fed, and by going up mountains, they'd run up out of gas. So they'd go up in reverse, and the gearing was lower in reverse. Is there any truth to that?
That's true. So there was a service station going up into the Black Mountains toward Oatman that people could hire a tow truck or a driver to drive your vehicle, tow your vehicle, because either you had to have it towed or you'd have to drive it in reverse. And there's dozens and dozens of switchbacks on that road. And so a lot of people would they'd hire someone in instead of trying to do that themselves.
That's interesting. I had a customer, he's actually a business owner across the street named Jack, that rode in a car with his parents backwards up a mountain in Arizona.
Now that's funny. Let's talk about Route 66 planning for Kingman. Tell us about the Arizona Route 66 passport and how east of Kingman is different from west and your annual events.
Oh, absolutely. So the Route 66 passport has been developed by the Route 66 Association of Arizona since 2010. We've had 4 different issues printed. So there's hundreds of thousands of these that have been out there, but it's a handy little travel guide people can use to plan their trip. You can take it into the different communities and have the passport stages pages stamped at the different visitor centers and get information on what there is to do. And then at the end of the passport, you complete a little survey, you send in the form, and you can get a certificate saying that I got my kicks on Route 66 in Arizona. The Route 66 Association of Arizona developed the passport because their goals are to preserve, protect, and promote historic Route 66 in Arizona. The association was formed when Angel Delgadillo and some business people in Seligman and Kingman felt that there was a missed opportunity to market to the people who wanted to have that old nostalgia experience of road trips on the highways. So in 1987, they formed the group. They lobbied the government, and they had the Congress or the Arizona State Legislature established Route 66 as a historic highway, and the section between Kingman and Seligman was scheduled to have a ribbon cutting in 1988. They had the governor there, so they put on a big car show called the Route 66 Fun Run, had the governor cut the ribbon dedicating the highway as open as a historic highway. And ever since, we've had a Route 66 Fun Run, the first Route 66 car show event that has ever been held, still going, with about 900 classic and custom cars that go from Seligman to Kingman. We have a big car show, and then from Kingman to Topak. So they drive the longest remaining stretch of Route 66 in the country. And that's a big draw for people all over the country. We've had people from France, Germany, Canada, the UK, New Zealand, Australia, Japan, a lot of people coming internationally to witness the Route 66 Fun Run. Other events that we have going on: Route 66 Street Drags. This is the world's largest legal street drags event, and it's held on the world's most famous highway. It's the third weekend in May. Then the Route 66 Festival, and we'll get a little bit into that later. That's also one of our big major events, something that we've developed as a centennial event, and that's held in October. And then one other one that I almost forgot about was the Route 66 Ultra Run. This is a ultra marathon traveling the longest remaining stretch of Route 66. It was founded by Marshall Ulrich and his wife Heather. He's a world famous ultra runner who's run in like all the different continents, and they established this as something that starts on the day that Route 66 was established, November 11th. So it goes 11th, 12th, and 13th, and runners run that 148 miles from Seligman all the way to Topak. But if you're planning on coming, those are some great events that you can come and experience. You don't have to do just the events. If you want to come and just do the drive, it's a really great experience. The section going west of Kingman is very much out of the Grapes of Wrath. It's that old mining road. It hasn't changed much. Since the 1940s, 50s, you'll go up into the mountains. There's a lot of switchbacks. It's a beautiful drive. It's a little bit warmer, so it's more of a spring, fall, winter, spring sort of experience that you want to do, because you'll end up down toward the mouth of the Colorado River, and it'll be a little over 500 feet elevation, so it gets really quite warm. But beautiful spring flowers, especially when we get rains. We get the California poppies, lupins, a lot of color in April, May, sometimes as early as March. And then going to the west or going to the east of Kingman, from Kingman to Seligman, is very much the heydays Route 66 as it was in the 50s, 60s, 70s. You have a lot of attractions, Grand Canyon Caverns, Keepers of the Wild, Hackberry General Store, some wineries. So it's a fun road to drive on, to stop at the different places and kind of experience what it would have been like traveling on Route 66 back in the 1950s. It's a little bit higher elevation, so Seligman's about 1,000 feet higher elevation than Kingman is. You're climbing up, going that way, or climbing down, coming to Kingman. It's a great road to travel from spring, summer, and fall. In fact, there's some of the businesses in Seligman that close down December, January, February. It gets a little bit cooler, and their visitation drops a little bit. But no matter what time of year, you've got one way or another that you can go and get a great Route 66 experience.
The fun run. Do you need to be a member of a particular organization to participate?
You don't. If you have something that's on wheels, you can be in the fun run. So there's buses, cars with teardrops, um, modern muscle cars, classic muscle cars. Pretty much, if it's on wheels, motorcycles, you can participate in the fun run. It's all about enjoying and having the experience of driving the longest remaining stretch of Route 66.
And did you say that occurs in May? Is that correct?
Correct. That's always the weekend before Mother's Day. So it's going to be May 3, 4, and 5, 2024.
And what towns will travelers go through on that fun run again?
So they start off in Seligman, which is 87 miles to the east of Kingman. And they'll go through Peach Springs, the capital of the Wallapai Nation. They'll go through Truxton, Valentine, and then into Kingman. And then as they go to the west, the following day, they'll go through Oatman and land in Topak Golden Shores.
So, how is Kingman, Arizona preparing for the centennial celebration coming up soon?
Yeah, Tim, that's coming pretty quickly. We've been working on developing Kingman as a Route 66 destination, as some place that people can go and have an experience of what it's like to be on Route 66 for a few years. So we started with our with our monument sign at the visitor center. It's a really cool 35-foot tall sign that's got neon and mid-century modern design. A lot of people like to get their picture with it. And then we opened up our drive-through shield. So this is kind of a miniature of it for a Hot Wheel, but it's a Route 66 shield similar to the one that we've been using at the Fun Run for cars to enter into the car show every year. People wanted to have that experience anytime. So we put a permanent one up, and that's been extremely popular. We're also working on another neon sign that's going to be going in downtown. And we've been working on the Kingman Route 66 Fest, started in 2021 with our first event. So we just held our last one this October 2023. And we're really trying to build this with artistic elements. So we have a pinup contest and a road sign graffiti contest where we take Route 66 or road signs off of Route 66 in Arizona or in Kingman, and they're decommissioned, and then we put them up for our artists to put their artwork on, and that's been a really fun event. We also have Cadillac Ranch Experience, so there's these 10-foot Cadillac silhouettes that are cut out of 1/8-inch steel and then plated together, and we put them up, and kids can come and they can spray paint them during the festival, and then we'll take those and display them throughout the year and bring them back, and people can spray over that the following year. Also, we have interactive chalk art, photographers, caricature artists, besides bands and beer garden with local beers and that sort of thing. So really something that we're trying to make as a cool event for people to come out, experience Americana, have an artistic experience. We've had a car show, motorcycle show, and Kingman's first vintage camper show, which was in its second year, and that was really a popular event. But those are some of the things that we've been trying to do with that event. We also worked with Kingman Main Street in 2022 to establish the Walkabout with Jim Hinckley. It's an interactive or a virtual tour where you can go and you scan a QR code and then take a tour of different areas in the downtown to see some of the really cool highlights. And we did that with National Day Calendar. They established Route 60, or the Road Trip Day, National Road Trip Day, being the Friday before Memorial Day in May. And we made that celebration the same day as we did the dedication of that Main Street. So that's really something to try to bring people into the downtown. And every year they're adding more spots. So they're hoping by the centennial, they've got several dozen different spots downtown. I think there's 33 on there right now, and they're trying to build onto that. We also worked with the Route 66 Association of Arizona to put in a virtual Angel Delgadillo story file. So this is a display in our visitor center where you can come up and you can ask a question to virtual Angel Delgadillo, and he gives you an answer, whether it's about his life or about reinvigorating Route 66. This company did 3 days, 8 hours a day interviewing Angel, asking him questions. And then they tied this AI to it. They split up the video into segments so you can go ask, and then it'll pull up the best segment to answer your question. So it's almost having a live Zoom with Angel Delgadillo, and it's available 7 days a week here in the visitor center. That's something that's really cool. And then we're also working with the Route 66 Association of Arizona and also with the Arizona Office of Tourism on putting together a centennial committee so we can collaborate with the other communities in Arizona. There are a lot of very cool initiatives that the Route 66 Association is pulling together. I serve as a board member, so I know what those are. At the moment, I can't release some of them. There's some exciting developments that are coming down the pike.
Sounds like you're really trying to make this a family event, and I love that.
Absolutely. We're trying to make it something that maybe would instill some interest in Route 66. The first few years we did some presentations, and I think we'd like to bring those back. We had Marshall Shore. He's an historian in Arizona. He's got a really cool getup. He's Arizona's hippest historian. We had some authors come in and give some presentations, but we've really tried to shift it into something that gives people a chance to come out and interact and do things, manipulate and try, different things, like standing with the sidewalk chalk where you feel like you're going to fall through the hole, and all the different things that make it a more of a memorable experience.
So, Josh, some of our viewers may not know who Angel is. Can you tell us who Angel is?
Yeah, Angel Delgadillo. He's born in 1927, so he's a year younger than Route 66. He's 96 years old right now. He was a barber. He ran a pool hall in Seligman, Arizona. It's a really tiny community of about 2,500 people. And really, his whole livelihood subsisted on the travelers that were coming on U.S. Highway 66. He played in a band, so he played in some different bars and orchestras, and all of the different things that were going on were because of all the traffic that was coming on Highway 66. Well, in 1970, I think it was 1978, Route 66 was bypassed in Seligman, Arizona, and the town just died. There's a famous picture of Angel and his brother Juan sitting in lawn chairs out in the middle of the road because nobody's coming down the road. So Angel really, really missed the economic activity. He was having a hard time getting beans on the table for his kids. But a few people, when they'd get off the interstate and accidentally come into Seligman, he'd talk with them, and they'd talk about the fond memories they had of, going out to the national parks or to the Golden Coast or driving on Route 66. And he realized there was a real opportunity to cater to the people that wanted to have that yesteryear experience. So he started trying to talk to the Chamber of Commerce in Seligman, to basically anyone that would listen. And he's really the individual that kicked off the whole national interest in Route 66. He was interviewed in the movie Cars. If you get the DVD or the Blu-ray, you'd have some interviews in the back, and he was one of the key people that John Lasseter interviewed to get the information for, what was important about Route 66 and how he could tie it into the movie.
Springfield, Missouri claimed to be the birthplace of Route 66. I've seen Tulsa claim to be the birthplace of Route 66. And recently I saw Seligman, Arizona being the birthplace of Route 66. So, can you comment on any of that?
I can comment on all of those. So the reason Tulsa would have that moniker is because Cyrus Avery was a businessman from Tulsa. He's known as the father of Route 66. He's the one that envisioned it and really came up with, having that path go from Chicago to LA. The reason that Springfield, Missouri calls themselves the birthplace of Route 66 is when they were developing the highways, the major, before that you'd had National Trails Highway, all these different highways that had names, and there was really no way to tell where you were based on the name of the highway. So they came up with the numbering system where you'd have the even ones going east and west, and the odd ones going north and south, and the major highways would end in zero. So Highway 10, 20, 30, 40, 60. So Cyrus really wanted to have this new highway he had envisioned be Route 60, but there was already a 60 that was planned going from Virginia through Kentucky and through Arizona all the way to California. We still have parts of it here in the state. Each state had to agree on every aspect of the road, or it wouldn't get built, because they were in charge of building the highway that went through their state. Well, that one that was going to be 60, if they couldn't keep the designation as 60, Kentucky said, we're not going to build it then. So basically Cyrus Avery, and this group that wanted to build this other highway had, I think, 62, 66, and 68. And in Springfield, Missouri is when they came up with the idea, we're going to do Highway 66 because it has a nice ring to it. And they sent a telegram to Washington, D.C. saying it's going to be 66. So that's why they say that they're the birthplace of Route 66. Seligman it's another qualifier. It's the birthplace of historic Route 66.
Oh, okay.
So that's where the rebirth started.
And does that go back then to Angel?
To Angel Delgadillo. Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
It's actually why he's known as the Angel of Route 66.
Right.
Interesting tidbit on Springfield. They actually got the telegram at the Colonial Hotel that the name had been changed from 60 to 62. And they didn't like 62 at all because they said it sounded second rate. So they began lobbying right then, and the Highway Commission finally said, fine, 66. Josh, could you tell us a little bit about the Kingman Museum and maybe some other points of interest?
Yeah, absolutely, Chris. So Kingman, one of our monikers is rugged, adventurous, and unafraid. We've got a lot of outdoor experiences for people to interact with. But specifically in the downtown area, Kingman built over 100 plus years. So there's a lot of different Art Deco and mid-century modern architecture that you'll find. There's a lot of colorful murals, breweries, restaurants in our historic downtown area. That's really where most people like to come and experience Kingman. And in that downtown is also where our museums are located and many of our historic sites. We have the Mohave Museum of History and Arts, which is all about Northwest Arizona settlement, railroading, mining, ranching, and the Benelli House, which is a 1915 home that was kind of opened up to the public. They do tours through there, and you can see what it was like for early settlers. And of course, the Arizona Route 66 Museum, which is all about the chronological history of Route 66 from when it was Native American trails all the way up until the heydays of Route 66. We have a couple other cool museums in town. The Kingman Railroad Museum, which is in the depot that was used from 1908. And then also the world's only all-electric vehicle museum. So we have a museum that was started here when we hosted a Route 66 International Festival in 2014. The Historic Electric Vehicle Foundation wanted to bring their some vehicles in, have a display, and spark the conversation of fundraising for putting up a permanent building. And so we hosted them here in a space that we had. They didn't want to bring the cars just for the weekend because they were coming in from all over the Western U.S. So they brought the cars in. We identified a space in our building, incorporated it into the museum. It's about 3,600 square feet of what was formerly a kind of an event hall used for fundraisers. And we started with 14 cars. Now there's 34 cars down there. There's over 100 cars in the collection, so there's a lot of them in storage. But a lot of people, I think, my experience is people think that electric cars are a fairly new phenomena, but we've got over a century of electric vehicle history in the museum, starting in 1908 with a baggage tug. So it's a very interesting sort of perspective to come into the visitor center, and you'll get the Route 66 Museum, the Electric Vehicle Museum, as well as the drive-through and all of those different experiences. Kingman, as I said, it's really an outdoor mecca. So we've got Surbat Foothills Recreation Area, almost 40 miles of hiking and biking trails. We've had International Mountain Biking Association accredited events on those trails. And then we also have a wagon road. So there was a gold rush going on in Kingman in the 1880s, 90s, and there were all these cowboys that were going out north of town to get gold. And they were all kind of acting a little bit crazy. So at the time we had this, there was a mental institution, a sane asylum in Stockton, California, which pretty much served this area of the country. So as the prospectors were going up to this mine, they'd say they were going up to Stockton Hill because they're all kind of a little bit crazy going for this gold. And this wagon road is the road that they would use coming into downtown to bring their ore to go onto the railroad. So because of the heavy ore, it's really dug deep into the road, and you can go and experience it today and see where that wagon road was and get some really cool, Western mining history by visiting that site. And what's funny is, our major roads that we have going through Kingman now is, of course, Route 66, and the other one is Stockton Hill Road that follows that path going north of town. We have 18-hole professional golf course, Surbat Foothills Golf Course, and they also have disc golf on that course. And we've got some wineries and a distillery, Desert Diamond Distillery, just out of town. So there's a lot of different things to see and do in Kingman, Arizona.
I know that when we went through Kingman, my 2-year-old son loved playing on the train at Metcalf Park.
Yeah, so we have a old steam locomotive that when it was retired in the 1950s, as diesel trains were taking over, it was donated to the city. And that's sitting in a park just across the street from our visitor center. Well, also on the back of that train is a caboose that was added in 1987. And what they did is they had all the kids in the community get up in the front and pull the train forward so they could make room on the tracks, for the caboose to go on. I was one of those kids. We pulled it so hard they had to have a backhoe at the front to stop it so that it wouldn't go off the front of the tracks. So it is a fun place because you can step up into the cab of the train and you can kind of see the instruments and get an engineer's perspective, or you can stay on the back of the booth and get a pretty cool picture in the park.
Speaking of photos, when my friends and I drove our hot rods through Kingman years ago, I don't think the drive-through shield was there then. So where is the location of the shield? Is it near the museum?
Yeah, it's actually just on the far end of the parking lot where the museum is located. We opened it up on National Drive-Through Day, which was held in July of 2022.
Yep. I think we went through there like 2018, 19, something like that. Yeah. Well, I'll tell you what, I appreciate you taking time with us today. Now, Josh, how can people follow Kingman, Arizona on social media?
Absolutely. It's real simple. All of our handles are Explore Kingman. So our website's explorekingman.com, our Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, it's all at Explore Kingman.
I'd like to thank our special guest today, Josh Noble, for taking time to visit with us.
Thanks, Josh.
I enjoyed it. Thank you for having me on This is Route 66.
I'd like to say thank you to our guest today, and also I want to say thank you for watching my videos. Producing these videos is just my way of giving back to Route 66 and preserving this piece of Americana for the next generation. Now you can let me know that you appreciate these videos by just simply clicking onto this logo to subscribe to my channel, and of course feel free to share these videos to your social media pages.